mastery-based approach is actually, it is essentially building up on the fundamental skills and prerequisites in order to get to the next skill. So this works especially well in math, although it works in a number of other subjects as well, because math is by nature very cumulative. So for example, unless you learn to count, you're going to have a very hard time doing addition or subtraction. Unless you learn addition or subtraction, you're going to have a very hard time multiplying. Unless you learn how to multiply, you're going to have a really hard time doing fractions, as an example. So mastery-based learning is, I think, especially effective in mathematics because it takes the approach of looking at what prerequisite skills you need in order to learn or get or have the prerequisite knowledge in order to learn and get to the next skill. And there's a combination of mastery-based learning and scaffolding, which we actually employ within Prodigy. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're learning to multiply by 5, and a student is having difficulty with that. If we determine that, we'll actually pull that student back to a prerequisite skill and actually try to identify which prerequisite skill that student is missing. So if you can't multiply by 5, maybe we'll pull you back to counting up by 5s and skip counting. If the student is still having difficulty with skip counting, we'll pull them back up to skip counting by 1s or 2s. So in that way, we're actually identifying what the prerequisite skill is that they're fundamentally missing. And then once they learn that, we kind of scaffold them back up to the previous skill that they were in.
I think sometimes it's a bit tricky to understand the difference between what's scaffolding and what's mastery-based learning. And I love this idea of, if I understand correctly, mastery-based learning is somewhat like climbing up a flight of stairs. There's an order in which you learn things to make sure that you mastered the fundamental skill before you move on to the next fundamental skill, where scaffolding is making sure you have that foundation. So let's say they've moved up to multiplication, but you realize something else in counting is missing. You can pull them back in order to jump back up the stairs. It's like Candyland, something like that.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, I love that.